Who was it? Can you mention that?
It was a European one.
Okay.
So to say nobody has that, I think is untrue. I hope our government has it, right? But the dishonesty behind it would be a problem if they did. And they're not preparing America for this October 7th round of attacks that are coming here.
You're mentioning law enforcement being proactive, and I don't see that happening no matter what.
Right. But at least if, so you know how budgets work and training works and everything else. At least if you say a threat's coming and the government puts out something, it gives you a catalyst or it gives you something to hold on to, right? And you can go and say, we need more training. We haven't even done this type of training in 6 years. Like, you can start having the discussions. But if nobody's sharing anything, and I don't know if you saw, but Scott Mann and I went and met with Governor DeSantis and briefed this to him. And he said, I've received no threat reporting at all on terrorism from the federal government. So they're not passing anything down to these levels. So anyone who's like, yeah, this is all happening behind the scenes, don't worry, everyone's prepared, our law enforcement knows. Most of the country have never heard Al-Qaeda's planning an attack here.
Well, actually, I'll redact what I just mentioned. It sounded like DeSantis actually took it very seriously.
He did.
And didn't he develop some sort of a task force?
So he did multiple things. He, the next day, briefed the sheriffs, every sheriff in the state of Florida, and told them there's a potential threat, which matters, right? And then, yeah, he created like basically a kind of an information sharing so we can get in touch with his people immediately if we found some threat info or just something useful that he could get the state involved in or to train behind. So he's been proactive of like, how can I get ahead of this?
Well,
or how can I use people like you, right? Like your community. Florida's full of retired special ops guys who fought these guys for 20 years overseas, right? And he understands that, and he's like, how do I harness that?
Well, that's what I was getting at. So he did stand up. Eddie Gallagher was telling me about it. I think Scott told me about it.
Well, there's a little bit. So that's slightly different, but he'll be able to utilize that. So he basically has this thing called the Florida National Guard. And the Florida National Guard is like, could have the capabilities of a counterterrorism force. It's being trained properly that way. It has different type of legal authorities. So he has positioned the state of Florida to basically have a force that is a force multiplier against counterterrorism, and this doesn't really exist in other states. So he, though, was on that train even before the Al-Qaeda threat. He just got ahead of it, right? So he was already preparing something like this, and he now has a force with the capabilities that at least can respond along with law enforcement, basically. So you'll have more trained bodies to deal with this faster in an emergency.
So I wonder if there's a way to get, I mean, I'm obviously very concerned about Tennessee. I wonder if there's a way to get DeSantis to have a chat with Bill Lee, the governor of Tennessee, to start standing something up like that, because I thought that was genius.